The January 8th Lane Community College Board of Education Board meeting will now be called to order. Celia, will you please call roll?
Yes, Kevin Alltucker.
Here.
Denise Diamond.
Here.
Austin Fulnagi.
Here.
Sophie Gibson.
Here.
Steve Mattel.
Here.
Zach Mulholland.
Here.
Julie Weisman.
Here.
Okay, we will be moving on to the land recognition. The land acknowledgement speaker for this meeting is Denise Diamond. Denise, will you please provide the recognition?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to start our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homelands of the Kailapuya
Calapooya.
people. The Kalpuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you, Denise. We'll be moving on to the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the January 8th board meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I've got Austin and then Denise. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed say nay. And it passes unanimously. Please note that the equity lens has been provided for the board's reference. Do we have any questions or comments to the responses to information requests?
Yes, I do. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. In regards to the International Emergency Fund, so that is done through the foundation. And is there policies and restrictions or certain criteria that needs to be met with that international fund?
Yes, there is a process. I don't believe there's a policy surrounding it. There's a process like our other funds. The monies from it get donated from external constituents or people at the college, and the process involves the international programs advisor meeting with a student and bringing forth a specific situation that a student might have.
Got it.
And the foundation does manage the funds, but the director of international programs is the person that makes the call on
Understood.
on what the situation is and whether to fund the student.
Understood. So there is like wiggle room to the different emergencies that is applicable.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, big reason I brought that up. First off, I'm really glad to see our student representative here because there is an International Student Emergency Fund. So if you run into any students that are in an emergency situation, absolutely just know that as student government. And I know you guys provide a lot of support for students and advising in that. And I would also just implore the foundation and even reach out to our representative on the foundation board, Denise, that if there's with the other question that I asked, which was the international program, how that's going to be impacted by any travel bans, things of that nature, that there might arise emergency situations that our international students come up with that is going to be it needs to be addressed and might need emergency funds to address. So I would love to just implore the foundation board to maybe expand, have a more expansive conversation of how we can either expand that fund, make that fund go through a process that can make immediacy for those funds to be available to international students and things of that nature. Yeah, this is just I just implore the foundation to consider those different options. So thank you. Yeah. Of course.
Not seeing any other questions. We'll now be moving on to public comment. The board may not respond directly to any issues raised during public comment, but will refer those issues to the president for appropriate action. Celia, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we'll start in person with Justin Chin, followed by Stacy Kaiser, and then we'll go online to Kate Sullivan, followed by Sarah Erickson.
Good evening. Happy New Year. Dr. Bolger, Chair Mulholland, President Gibson, Board of Directors, Cabinet, thank you for having me here this evening. Want to just take a couple minutes here to speak on behalf of one of my department's specialized support services. It is a department that serves our adult population with high barriers to success through the lens of developmental and intellectual disabilities. We have about 35 to 40 students in that program, 3 part-timers and a slew of part-time employees. Just want to take a moment to explain some of the things that we're doing here, talk about how we're connected with the Gallup Purdue Big Six, which is a framework that really looks at student success, completion, and key indicators that lead to a good life. So a little bit about Specialized Support Services, S3. We're like a college within a college. We work with those adult students with developmental and intellectual disabilities to gain transformative job skills, blending essential employability skills, AKA soft skill development, on-the-site job training, job coaching, and the last part here, opportunities to reflect as learners and future professionals as they enter the workforce. S3 has served Lane County and LCC for over 51 years, helping to place our students into the workforce and supporting our local economy with skilled and caring employees who contribute to the vitality of their businesses and our local community. I want to highlight how S3 has been successful over the years. We're doing this because we're focused on the Gallup Purdue Big Six. In that Gallup Purdue Big Six, 6 things that line up here. Firstly, students will be able to say, I had at least one instructor who made me excited about learning, whether that's academic learning, technical learning, or workforce learning. Secondly, my instructors cared for me as a person. Third, I had a mentor who encouraged me to pursue my goals and my dreams. Those are all things as far as mentorship side goes. Second part is experiential. Those 3 pieces I worked on a project that took me more than a term to complete. I had an internship, work-based learning opportunity, or a job that allowed me to apply what I was learning in the classroom into hands-on daily activities. And lastly, I was extremely active in activities and organizations while I attended school. As Dean of Workforce Development, I have the honor of leading this group of professionals and students. This year, we have been more deliberate in how we frame career readiness and success by adding a monthly job club in which we are working on interview skills, navigating workplace conflict, and proactive communication skills, all essential employability skills that these students will need and are growing every day while they're working here at LCC and while they're getting that coaching from our professionals. I want to highlight one incident that happened right before the holiday break that encapsulates these Big Six traits and also adds an element that I cannot coach, hire, or train for, which is that deep care for one another that is crucial to building community on this campus. We had an incident where we had a professional who had a significant health scare. He was evacuated off of our campus by local EMTs. In this situation, we were quite understaffed because it was right at the holiday break. In this situation, our professional staff cleared an area for the EMTs to arrive and create a safe evacuation space. Our students, 2 of them in particular, moved the other students into another room, took attendance, checked for safety, made sure that everyone was safe, there was a place of comfort, and that I was contacted. And so those are pieces of that Big Six that are reflective in the work of S3 that I appreciate, and I appreciate the support that the board and the college gives to this department. Thank you.
Good evening, Lane Community College board members and administration. My name is Stacy Kaiser and I teach biology. I want you to think about a class that you took that had a lab. Maybe it was college, maybe it was high school. Did your teacher help you with the microscope or pH meter, answer your questions, push you to do just a little bit more? That's the experience I think we can all agree that we hope to provide to the Lane Community College students. Unfortunately, we operate within a system that does not share our vision. Lane is not alone, but is behind as a system in fairly compensating faculty who teach lab credits. Do you know that for every lecture credit I have taught over my 30 years at this college, I earned 1 teaching load credit for every lab credit? but for every lab credit, I have earned 0.682 teaching load credits. I am really afraid to do the sum total of all those hours that I was in the classroom more than my colleagues. In practical terms, for contracted faculty like me, it means that I am with students for roughly 3 more hours a week than my colleagues who do not teach lab credits. I am with students for 18 hours a week versus 15 hours for a full-time teaching load of lecture-only courses. This is the time that I cannot grade, I cannot plan, I cannot meet with anyone. So to effectively do the same job, I displace my grading and planning time to attend meetings. When do I grade and plan? Weekends mostly, because I'm too old to work at night anymore. It became clear that most higher education faculty who teach lab credits here in the state of Oregon struggle to find common meeting times when I co-chaired the HECS Biology Common Course Numbering Subcommittee this last year. And we struggled really to find meeting times where we could all get together. For non-contracted faculty, these extra hours impact their time to do other jobs, to create a living wage, or to spend with family, and it may impact their bottom line, their budget. The system extends to the state level where the definition of a lab credit supports this discounted teaching compensation. The 2023 Oregon Community College Policy and Process book sets out the definition of, quote, laboratory or lab means an instructional setting in which students work independently with the instructor available in the instructional area for assistance and supervision, and that equals 30 to 36 hours per term for 1 credit. Our students deserve lab credit instructors who are not burnt out and can assist them in becoming our future scientists, nurses, criminal justice officers, and fellow citizens in trying to solve today's wicked problems. Thank you.
Kate Sullivan.
Kate, can you hear us?
I can hear you now. I couldn't for a moment.
Great. You want to go ahead?
Sure. To President Bolger, Executive Cabinet members, and Lane's Board of Education, thank you for this opportunity to provide a verbal statement. And I'm making this statement on behalf of Jessica Alvarado, who could not be present at this meeting. As a longstanding faculty member who has attended or spoken at many board meetings over the years, it is most concerning to learn that the board was not able to come to a decision on the candidates who applied for the vacant at-large position. Although there is an election in May for the open seat, that is far too long of time to have a 6-member board attempting to make critical decisions that impact the current and future functions of the college. In the past year, it has become notable to me how divided on many issues the 6 current members are. If the board could not decide on this one important decision, how is it going to fare on the remaining decisions that need to be made this academic year? The 7th board member is critically important to move forward. I propose that another special meeting be convened this month and that each current member rank those who were reviewed in December and vote according to the appointment process previously included in the 12-18 agenda. Ranking only one's favored candidate does not adhere to the letter or spirit of this policy. Please uphold your responsibility to Lane and the community it serves. Thank you for the service, your service thus far, and your commitment to equity, justice, and inclusion. Jessica Alvarado. Thank you.
Sarah Erickson, followed by Paula Thani and Amy Beasley.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm reading this statement on behalf of another faculty member who wished to remain anonymous due to concerns about retaliation. Good evening, members of the board and President Bolger. While I was not able to attend the December 18th board meeting, I did watch the recording in its entirety. As a longtime LCC faculty and community member, I was taken aback by the board's inability or possibly unwillingness to follow their agreed upon ranking of interim board member applicants. When my kids were growing up and entered their salty teen years, they often found school and house rules not to their liking. As responsible parents, we consistently reminded them that they were always welcome to work to change rules and laws, but they were not allowed to decide which rules to follow and which to ignore, at least not without consequence. According to the LCC board's OCCA Board Policy 2110, vacancies on the Board of Education, an interim board appointment is required. As board members in good standing, I must assume that you are each aware of this obligation with regard to filling the interim board position. Working through a process to change this obligation for further occurrences is one thing, but defiantly choosing to ignore it in the present situation is quite another. Leaving the seat vacant has the potential to be quite serious and could easily have negative impacts on our college and community. To the board members who refused to rank all 4 applicants or refused to participate in the ranking at all, I implore you to reconsider, to do your civic duty, and to do right by this community. Thank you.
Olethani?
Dear President Bulger and board members, Sophie. My name is Paula Toney. I've taught math here for 8 years. Last year, I led academic program review for CTE Math. We examined how the math department supports career technical programs. I met with LCC faculty in a variety of CTE programs: construction, diesel, electrician, dental hygiene, aviation maintenance, culinary, CNC machining, and others. As part of program review, an external peer reviewer visits our campus to provide perspective and feedback. We invited Lynn Benton Community College math faculty, Michael Lopez. Shortly after his visit, Michael was featured in a USA Today article entitled, "Math is Tripping Up Community College Students. Some Schools Are Trying Something New." And I believe some of you may have seen this article last summer. The article states that many students in CTE were getting most of the way towards a degree, but were stopped by a math course. Michael at LBCC has been working to develop customized math classes for many of LBCC's CTE programs. This approach requires a significant time investment, but seems to result in increased success for CTE students in those classes. Providing more effective math instruction within CTE programs supports equity, quality, and increased completion. In order to better serve our students, LCC math faculty and CTE math faculty need more time to coordinate and to update courses and materials together. This work has already begun. During fall term, the math department was able to provide some curriculum development funding for me to work with Jeffrey Hogue, who teaches aviation maintenance at the airport. I met with him regularly, and together we looked at the math that is embedded in his curriculum and improved how it is presented and explained. The jet engine theory was new to me, but I was able to draw upon my math teaching knowledge to provide suggestions on how to effectively convey math skills within that context. However, the funding available for work like that is quite limited. An extended collaboration like this is valuable, but quite time-consuming. Last year, I applied for a sabbatical project entitled Overcoming Challenges to a Quality Math in CTE Approach. I plan to use my sabbatical to research how other colleges are funding collaboration between math and CTE faculty. I am grateful that our FPD, Faculty Professional Development, provides the opportunity for me to spend a term, next term, focusing intensively on this topic. In a regular term, I only have 6 hours per week available for non-teaching work. My dean, Jessica Hopkins, has provided contacts at other community colleges. She and Carla Arciniaga, who also works with Perkins Funding at LCC, suggested that I attend a conference in April to present and gather input from other administrators and faculty working in CTE in Oregon. I look forward to gathering insights and to working together to overcome challenges to a quality math in CTE approach. My purpose here is to update you on this work, but also to emphasize the importance of a faculty-led FPD program to provide opportunities like these. Thank you. And I'll also say that I am teaching a class in the new iTech building, and it's quite nice over there, so I'm enjoying that.
Amy Beasley, followed by Adrian Mitchell and Wendy Simmons.
Good evening. I'm Amy Beasley, and I'm reading a statement for Dr. Geneva Anderson, who could not be here tonight. She writes, "Support for adoption of open education resources, or OERs, is a strategic and essential investment to support Lane's vision, mission, and values and promote student success. As an LCCEA union member and science faculty instructor, I am committed to providing learning opportunities for my students that promote student success. I teach introductory and majors biology courses, both in-seat and online, and I use OERs in each course that I teach. While oftentimes we think of OERs as just free textbooks, myself and many of my colleagues in science have used a range of different OERs for activities, labs, and assessments in our courses. Examples include activities designed by content and education experts at Howard Hughes Medical Institute and scientific research articles. OERs promote diversity and inclusion in the classroom by allowing a high degree of customization of material, supporting non-traditional students, and bridging cultural gaps. Last term, I had a student who couldn't come to class one day, and I was able to use an OER to provide them an alternative lab that they were able to complete on their own and still meet the learning objectives for the day. I have also used OER materials to promote cultural competency in science and represent more diverse voices than my own. These resources are critical for staying up to date with a constantly changing landscape of science. Costs for lab materials are ever increasing, so use of OERs is essential to keep overall student costs down in order to minimize the disproportionate impact on low-income and first-generation students. It allows us to prioritize using lab and course fees for other high-impact learning aspects to our courses, like undergraduate research. A commitment to higher impact practices that support students and their learning goals requires additional time and resources to develop curricula that incorporate OERs creatively and thoughtfully. We need your help to increase support for faculty who are already or are looking to adopt OERs in their courses. Support means maintaining our robust professional development program so faculty can learn about and incorporate OERs into their classes, and investing in our library to maintain journal subscriptions that we can share broadly with our students. By supporting faculty to embrace open education resources, Lane can help us transform challenges into opportunities in our mission to make quality education truly accessible and inclusive for all. Thank you.
Good evening, esteemed Board of Education members. I'm Adrian Mitchell, President of LCCEA, and I'm here with Wendy Simmons, our VP at large. We are speaking as faculty union leaders, voters, and constituents in Lane County. We encourage you to fulfill your civic duty to the people of Lane County and continue the appointment process to select a 7th board member for our Board of Education. Indefinitely postponing the process to appoint a 7th board member does not serve our campus community or the needs of the people of Lane County who elected you and whom you represent. We recommend that you follow Board Policy 2110, which requires the board to appoint a new member when there is a vacancy. We quote the policy: "When a vacancy is declared, the remaining board members shall meet and appoint a person to fill the vacancy from any of the electors of the district if the position is one filled by both nomination and election at large, and otherwise from any of the electors of the zone from which the vacancy occurs." Board members agree to follow the policies and procedures of the board whenever joining to serve in this role as a public official. In November and December, you formally committed to a process to fill this vacancy. Our campus and community beyond rely on you to follow your own policies and honor the commitments you make through board action. In response to your public call to the people of Lane County to apply, 4 highly qualified candidates prepared applications and were invited to interview at one of your special meetings in December. One of these highly qualified candidates should have been appointed. This is a critical obligation, not an optional task, and we ask you to follow through on your own commitment to the community and to the public as board members.
Hi, I'm Wendy Simmons, and I'll read the rest of the statement. It is in everyone's interest to have a full functioning board. 7 board members are needed to enable the board to effectively fulfill its charge to establish policies governing the operation of the college, adopt the college annual budget, and oversee the development of programs and services which members believe will best fulfill the needs of the people of the LCC district. This is on the Board of Education website. It is particularly important that the board provide leadership and guidance as we prepare for the upcoming budget season, and for the board to fulfill its fiduciary responsibilities and to comply with Oregon public budget law. 4 votes are required to make board decisions. Without a 7th board member, this could lead to a stalemate and prevent the board from approving the budget as evidenced by the December 18 special meeting deadlock. We were also disappointed to see that during the appointment process, candidates were invited to one-on-one meetings with the college president prior to the public meeting interviews. These meetings were not part of the board's approved policy nor procedure published on board docs for fulfilling vacancies. The May 2024 Gallup Campus Climate Survey of all LCC employees results indicate that LCC ranks in only the 5th percentile nationwide on the question, "If I raised a concern about ethics and integrity, I am confident my employer would do what is right." And the 8th percentile on the question, "Everyone at this institution is treated fairly regardless of individual differences such as ethnic background, race, age, disability, sexual orientation, gender, or gender identity." We are curious as to the purpose of these meetings and why they were allowed. We have heard from officials, campus and community members raising questions about the propriety of such meetings. The deadlock and lack of full participation by all board members in the December voting process to appoint a new board member reflects unfavorably upon our institution, our community's college. Our campus, our students, and the people of Lane County deserve representation by a full 7-member Board of Education for the next 6 months. We urge you to meet your responsibility as board members and to honor your commitments to the appointment process as planned. Thank you for your service.
Eric Kim.
Good evening, Lane Community College Board of Education, Dr. Bulger, SGA President Gibson. My name's Eric Kim. I teach psychology in the social science division. I'm here to talk about how psychology and the social sciences help students in their personal life or potential career. Good social relations is the glue that holds society together. Those with good social relations report higher levels of happiness. There's a tapestry of knowledge in the social sciences that can help us tip towards good social relations and away from bad social relations. And there's much beyond this topic that we would teach in a psychology class at LCC. Observing how couples interact, experts Jane and Julie Gottman can accurately predict whether couples will be broken up, together and unhappy, or together and happy several years later. The quality of the relationship comes down to whether or not they bring kindness and generosity, or contempt, criticism, and hostility. Factors not related to the quality of the relationship were sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or whether or not they had children or not. As an example, a husband is a Star Wars fan. He sees a new series is announced. He might tell his wife, look, a new Star Wars series is coming. He's not just commenting on Star Wars, he's requesting a response from his wife, hoping that they'll connect momentarily over Star Wars. The wife can respond either by turning toward or turning away from her. Those that turned toward their partner engaged their partner, showing interest, support, and emotional connection. Those who turned away would not respond or respond minimally and continue what they were doing, like watching TV or surfing the internet. Sometimes they would respond with overt hostility, such as, "Stop interrupting me, I'm busy." Well, what does this mean? Cultivate a broad identity to have common interests with your partner. Develop secure attachments. Learn about biases in social perception. Create environments and practice psychological processes that promote kindness and generosity and discourage contempt, criticism, and hostility. Get quality sleep. Commit time with your partner and avoid multitasking. These will help you notice the invitation to connect. Relating to last month, if you are rushed for time, anxious, or stressed, you're less likely to notice what's going on around you. I believe these will help a person grow good social relationships, increase happiness, and create a better world to live in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you to everyone who provided testimony. That is the conclusion of public comment. We will be moving on to the president's report. Dr. Bulger, will you please provide the report?
Yes, Happy New Year, everyone. In the interest of time, I have placed my report into the board agenda. I'll just say that I am grateful for the Board of Education and for their support, and also for all of the faculty, the staff, the students, the managers at Lane Community College for your dedication and commitment to our students and to our community. That's my report.
Okay. Next up is the Student Government Association report. Sophie, will you please provide the report?
Yes, I left my report in the other room, so I'm just gonna do it from here. We had a great so far welcome week. We served grilled cheese to students coming back, providing some nutritious food as students find their way around campus. We offered a lot of navigators, which I find was very helpful because students often, when they're coming here, don't know where they're going. So they not only have someone help them escort them to their classes, but they also see a friendly face that they'll see around campus again. So fostering those genuine connections and relationships with people on campus gives them a sense of belonging. Not only that, but we have a lot of things planned this coming term. Last term, we were very event focused. We got our name out there. We were able to connect with many, many students. So this term, moving forward, we'll be able to take a more advocacy-focused approach. We've got a couple of different things on our calendars in February, hopefully getting up to the Capitol to do a couple of different things like the rally, and working with OCCA to do some more lobbying at the Capitol to advocate for, student rights. And so, not only that, but a couple of our senators are also working on a project to develop more inclusive study spaces around the college for students who are neurodiverse and differently abled. So that's going to be really exciting to see, and that's all that I remembered. I know there's more, but
Yeah. We'll be moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any changes to be made to the consent agenda?
Board Chair,
Yeah.
I just want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Oh, could I say a
Do
few?
you want to speak to it?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you. First off, I see it's buried in here, which is the support for the OCCA legislative priorities. I really wanted to emphasize that by passing this, we are creating a we are pushing priorities that is going to help and have a huge impact on community colleges through not only here, but throughout the state. So I really want to appreciate that, as well as the Health Professionals Plaza naming recognition. It is great that we are honoring past presidents, and I just want to thank all of our presidents for their service.
Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. And all opposed, say nay. And that passes unanimously. We're moving into the action items section of the agenda. So Board Member Folnege requested that a motion to rescind be included on the January 8th board agenda. This motion, Austin, do you want to go ahead and introduce your motion and make the motion?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, let me speak to it first, and I would love to have this be a discussion if at all possible. I come before the board with this in the spirit of collaboration. When we look at how representation happens in this community, every member of this district gets 3 board members, 2 at large and 1 in their district. That's their representation on this board. And by taking no action in the appointment process, we are removing a third of representation that each and every member of this taxing district deserves and is entitled to. Per the board policy 2100, section 3, it states when a vacancy is declared under subsection 1, which is something we declared as a board, the remaining board members shall meet and appoint a person to fill the vacancy from any of the electors of the district if the position is filled by nomination, essentially. That is a board policy that we have. Now, there's no state statute or anything like that that discusses timelines in that policy and so forth. But it is a board policy that says the word shall. And it is a part of good governance to follow our own policy in regards to appointments and filling of vacancies. And the reason why that's also incredibly critical is that accreditation, the accreditation process every institution goes through, we're in the mid-year cycle of that. Good governance is a part of that accreditation process. You can research on your own North Idaho College and see how poor government actions and choices that they made, parts of it includes not following their own policy, negatively impacts their accreditation process and getting accreditation. And just so that you can understand, accreditation helps determine if you get financial aid and can use financial aid as an institution or not. And so I don't want something like this and I don't want our institution to even come remotely even close to that, which is a big part of why I'm advocating for us to reconsider this notion. Now, we had board members who communicated things like, I don't feel any of the other candidates are qualified, and this candidate is the candidate I want to move forward with. I heard concerns about political ambitions of some of the candidates. I heard that we want to follow democratic processes, bring this to the vote, bring this to the voters. And I can really appreciate that and respect that. And at the same time, whoever we appoint is going to go to the voters. And appointing someone is just as much as part of the democratic process as bringing this issue to the voters. So as much as voting to elect a position and appointing, they are a part of the same democratic process and a part of the same representational process. We saw in public comment representatives that are alumnus, students, former board members, current elected representatives, former and current members of other committees that we appoint, including the Bond Oversight Committee and the Budget Committee, who've produced public comment asking us to fulfill our duties to fill this position. And I implore the board that we continue with an appointment process by rescinding the motion to suspend indefinitely so that we can continue to have a conversation of the 4 candidates so that we can appoint for this position. Another reason, if I can, I'll just close on this. We have a lot going on in the next 6 months. We have a state legislative session where a budget is going to be created. We're going to be passing a budget that we're not going to have all the information. We're not going to be able, we are going off of an idea of what the legislative cycle and what the legislative budget may or may not be. We are going to have people from Hispanic backgrounds that are going to be afraid to essentially go seek an education. There's things that we have to do to protect our long-term goals for towards HSI, which is Hispanic Serving Institutions. We have to make decisions about any sort of travel bans and how that can impact our international program. We're going to have major discussions about a variety of different issues, including whether or not if the Department of Education is going to be dissolved or not. I hope not, but this literally is the thing that we might have to consider. And we need as many voices at the table as possible, not fewer. So I open this up as a discussion to start off with, and I hope that we can get to a motion. But I want to hear from my fellow board members. What would it take for us to get to a point where we can rescind the motion to suspend indefinitely and make an appointment? And during that appointment process, be able to indicate your first choice, second choice, third choice, as we agreed upon from our meeting on the 16th.
Austin, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and formally make a motion to rescind the prior decision and ask for a second.
Then go for a
and then
discussion.
go for discussion.
I make a motion that we rescind the, okay, sorry, my apologies with the wording here. I make a motion to rescind the suspension of the appointment process indefinitely.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? Kevin.
I appreciate your comments, Austin. I want to correct a few things for the public record. I think you were referring to me when I said that none of the other candidates were qualified. That's not what I said. So just to be clear, there's one candidate, Bob Brew, who in my mind was extremely qualified. I never did say that the others were not qualified. Okay. All right. So Bob, in my mind, brings the right combination of experience that this board needs in terms of financial experience, higher ed experience, elected official experience. None of the other candidates have those combination of skills. I'd like to point out that one of the letter writers called me a racist, which I didn't appreciate. And so for me, that kind of negates the credibility of that letter writer. So I want to put that into the public record. I mean, that kind of language is just really not appreciated, but it's unproductive, to put it politely. No one is, I think the board is united, I believe, in desiring to put the right person on the board, which is more important than just merely appointing someone. So, I mean, that's an important nuance. It's critically important for this board to appoint the most experienced person who can help us move forward and make the college better. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'll speak.
Please.
So, I got a lot of contacts from the public, people who emailed me asking me to reconsider my view, my decision from prior. I read all the testimonies. I listened to all the testimonies. I heard the arguments. I still haven't heard anything compelling enough to change my principled view that I'm holding. So I prepared a kind of a statement because I really thought about all of this.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to read it so I don't go astray. So why I'm going to vote no on the motion to rescind is, first, I want to really acknowledge all the people who actually spoke and who actually reached out to me, who sent me emails. I appreciate the thoughts, the commitment to Lane County. I struggled with this decision. I reached out to even colleagues to get feedback, and Question whether or not I was about to commit political suicide, which is absurd for a board position. And I'm real frustrated to be that this is so political. I didn't join this board for that reason. I joined this board to be a board member and to do board governance, not to do politics. So I want to thank everybody for giving their feedback. Second, I want to remind everybody that I am an appointed position. I was appointed in July to serve the last year of a term of a previous Springfield rep. My friend asked me to apply and to consider applying for it. And I did so without any political ambition or any personal ambition. I applied because it was a good fit for me and for the board, my governance experience, my community college experience. Not only did I applied because it was good for me and for the board. Not only did I return to college in 2011 and attend LCC to complete a degree that got interrupted when I was elected president of the California Student Government Association in my 20s. As a non-traditional student and after having to move to the state's capital to serve my one-year term, my education got derailed. But through that whole process, I am extremely grounded in what the community college system is all about. On behalf the student level, the faculty level, the classified staff level, and the administrative levels. I understand all of it. I had to lobby and work with everybody in the state capitol when I was a student. And I love this college. I loved being here. I loved everything about it. I love the system as a whole, what we do for the community. So when I applied to the board, I wanted to support LCC and to ensure students in the county is being served. So I don't take this decision lightly. But I was appointed, not elected. When elections happen in May, there'll be 3 open seats, mine included. I will have only served 10 months when that happens. And it'll be up to the voters to decide if I am qualified to represent them again because I plan on running. So as appointed a position, I don't feel that the voters gave me any direction at all to what to do to appoint yet another person to the board and really to only serve for 5 months, maybe 4 by the time onboarding and learning and going through the process and declaring to run and, all of that. And what if they don't get elected? What if they decide not to run? We've onboarded somebody, we've appointed, 6 of us are making a decision of who we think might be helpful for 4 months. Some of you stated concerns that the vacant position will cause difficulty with this board in getting any business done. This seat has been vacant since November 6th, and with the exception of the last meeting, we have not had any gridlock. In fact, there have been a couple of meetings since I've been on board where we only had 6 people be present and we didn't experience any gridlock. We are not so far off on each other. I think there's a lot of misperceived notions of how we're all going to vote. But I am confident that this 6 people can actually get some business done. I think that we will align. I think that we can work together on behalf of the students, the faculty, the staff, and the community. Board seats shouldn't be political. LCC deserves folks committed to the college, to the student excellence, to meet the community's workforce and educational needs. Our job as board members is to literally govern through policy. Our literal job description is represent the public interest, establish policies that define the institutional mission, and set prudent, ethical, and legal standards for college operations. Hire and evaluate the president, delegate power and authority to that president to effectively lead Lane Community College, assure fiscal health and stability, monitor institutional performance and educational quality, and advocate and protect Lane Community College. I think the 6 of us are doing a pretty damn good job of that. And I think that we will continue to do that for the next 5-6 months that's left in our terms of office, because it's going to be hard to actually do all this work and run for office. I know I'm going to disappoint some of you with my decision, but I'm sticking to my principles and my values by trying to remove politics from this decision and putting it into the hands of the voters. So I'm going to be voting no. Thank you.
Steve and then Denise.
Denise, go ahead.
No, you, please.
Well, I'll try to be brief. I also have thought about the decision since last December. There's been not a lot for me, but a handful of comments made. And of course, I'm always, rethinking and willing to change my mind if I feel like I've erred. I don't. So I'll say that I'm also going to vote no, but you've asked for a little bit of an explanation. So I feel somewhat obligated to provide it and do it in a respectful way. Try not to damage relationships on the board. But like Kevin, I felt that Bob Brew was the most qualified. That's not to say that the others weren't, but I felt like he was the most qualified by a significant margin. And he's come back to us, right? So he tried once and then tried again. So that gave some evidence of his commitment to getting on to serving on this board. The fact that a handful of board members ranked him fourth last twice in a row, or last time maybe it was three, but in any case ranked him last twice in a row for me caused me, honestly, I'm sorry to say this, to doubt the sincerity of some board members as they were evaluating the candidates. There were other reasons. I think I will leave them unstated at this point in time that further caused me to doubt the sincerity of the process that we were engaged in. And so I withheld at that point from any further action. And like Julie decided, well, at this point, I think it's best to wait it out until the voters decide and no longer leave it in the hands of this board. And I recognize, maybe unlike Julie, that we may face some difficulty as a result because we won't have a deciding vote should things break down to a 3-3 and there may be some contentious issues. I see that. I recognize that. I'm not quite sure how we'll work through that, but that's where we're at.
Denise?
Thank you. In as nice a way as I can say it, Steve, I take a great deal of issue with suggesting that because we have a very big difference of opinion on who is first and who is last, that somehow there were inconsistent motives or lack of understanding of qualifications. I've been a community college professor for 20 years. I hold 2 master's degrees. I think I can figure it out. I was very excited about the opportunity to nominate someone who brings a perspective that I feel the board needs and pass the baton also to the next generation. And I speak this as the elder of this board. I'm wondering about the policy that says we shall elect someone. And I am fulfilling a position also that was terminated, that needed to be filled before it ended, okay? And yes, it was by voting, but without a how do you call that? The candidate, another person? An opponent. Thank you very much. Anyway, and I don't think that that changes things. I really don't think that that changes things. I think that the policy that says that we shall means that we shall, and that whatever amount, we cannot predict election results. So whenever there's a number of board seats that are going to be up for election, we have absolutely no control over that. We will do our best and follow the democratic processes. And we have absolutely no way of controlling that. So personally, I don't think that that's a solid argument because there are these processes in place because situations happen, whether it's somebody with a newly elected position, somebody who moves for family reasons, health reasons. There's all kinds of things in our lives. So I just think that the route to follow the policy and to rank is a fair and visible policy for our community to see us follow. And I would like to do that. And that's where I stand.
I'll jump in real quick. So obviously I was disappointed that we were not able to arrive at a consensus around an individual candidate last month and this month. And I'm concerned that if this motion to rescind were to approve, that we would unfortunately end up spinning our wheels and wasting folks' time and not arrive at a final decision. So I'm going to go ahead and vote no for that reason, just because I don't think it's going to get us anywhere, unfortunately. Is there any other discussion before we vote? Okay, Austin.
Excellent. First off, let me just start here. Kevin, the individual who said that you were racist, they're dead wrong. I know you personally. I know your conduct as an individual and so forth, and no one deserves to be called that. I'm really sorry that that happened. Julie, someone mentioned to you committed political suicide, and I hate the fact that they use that word, of course. And again, nobody deserves to be talked that way. And I'm really sorry that that happened. In regards to the subject at hand, I haven't heard, though, in regards to addressing the concerns of representation. Again, our community deserves representation on this board. And additionally, I am also really concerned about our policy as well, and making sure that we abide by the policies that we have for ourselves. And again, I got a little bit more information. And by the way, I really appreciate your comments, Julie. Many of the things that you said is the same reasons why I'm on this board as well. And I would like to work collaboratively to remove politics out of this. I would love to work and have an opportunity to discuss here. How can we move forward with the concerns that you have? And how can we remove those concerns? That's a big thing of what I'm trying to figure out here. And that's a big thing of what I'm trying to glean out of this action here. That being said, though, I'm not necessarily hearing any changes of hearts and minds on this one. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and remove my motion to rescind. And I hope that, again, I really hope that we can have a conversation of how we can remove those barriers to vote to rescind this motion and also to appoint someone so that our district can have representation. I truly, truly want that. But for now, hearing that from what you've all said, I'll go ahead and remove my motion to rescind.
Can I ask a technical question, Chair?
Yes.
I know we don't have an attorney for the board, but what are the consequences of a board not following a board policy?
My understanding is that those are effectively policies that the board puts onto itself, and that the board holds itself accountable to those policies, separate from ORS, which the state holds us accountable for.
Thank you.
And so I think if Austin wants to withdraw his motion, that has to be accepted by the second. So do you accept Austin's withdrawal of his motion?
I know it's very difficult for Austin to do that, and it's very difficult for me to second it, but I see no movement forward, and it's very, very disappointing.
Yeah.
So I will second it under all those conditions.
Remove the second. Okay. So
Can I just say something real quick?
yes.
That policy needs to be updated to take into consideration vacancies that have occurred, like Lisa's vacancy. When 4 months into her term, a vacancy has occurred, it automatically triggered an election. Automatically triggered an election. So she was only 4 months into a 4-year term, and it triggered an election. So the election, not true? That's
She
what I
was
was.
2.5 years into her 4-year term.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a 4-year. I was told that it was a 4-year and there's only
She-
4 months left.
No, there's 1.5 years left in her term.
Yeah. So it triggered an election. We had to immediately replace her. So it's just we need to be clearer in that policy what that means.
Could I just say, and that our OCCA attorney has consulted with us on this matter. I will make sure that she puts in writing her advice to the board, and I will send it out to all of the board members after this meeting.
My apologies.
Dr. Bolger.
And according to state policy, we are not required. Steve, then
Yeah,
we'll
I
move
just want
on.
to clear up also that as far as I understand, that we are not in violation of even our own board policy. I get that I hear the word shall, I hear the emphasis there, but we have not been given any particular time limit in which to act. And that is also a particular, an important part of this. I don't believe that we are in any violation of that, nor are we in any danger of losing our accreditation over this particular issue.
No, we're not.
Again, good governance is a part of it, and as a part of that evaluation. So, and not having proper representation for the people is not, yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm not moving the motion forward. I want us to keep talking about this though, please, for the sake of our district, for the sake of our people, for the sake of the people that we represent, and for the discussions that we're going to need someone on board to have. Please, we need to continue this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sophie, and then I'm going to wrap this up.
It's difficult for me to enter this conversation as a student and a representative of our students, and that is kind of disappointing to say that it's difficult to join this conversation. But obviously, we all know the few options that the board has moving forward. And I think that no matter what happens, whether there's the 3-3 split down the middle with 6 people on the board, or if we take a new board member on, that each and every one of us in this room represents me and my friends and our faculty members and the people that work for this college. And so I think it's important for each of us to put ourselves aside and serve me and my friends and our faculty members and your friends that work here. And so no matter what choice we make, it is our duty on this board to put ourselves aside and to put politics aside so that we can engage with one another and actually move forward to make decisions that benefit not only me, my friends, and you guys, and our faculty and employees as well. So thank you.
I just want to say I appreciate the discussion, everyone. We do have a number of other important items to get to this evening. And so with that, we'll be moving on to discussion items. The first discussion item on the agenda is a budget parameters discussion.
Yes, I'd be happy to go ahead and introduce this topic. Kara Flath is going to have the initial discussion with the board about budget parameters. We are at that point in our academic year. So Kara?
Sure. And Jonathan Campbell's going to join me and tag team part of this conversation. But again, starting this out, this is just an initial discussion of what the budget parameters look like, the things you should expect as we continue to move forward and we get through the budget cycle. So we're very early on. And I know everybody is always excited to talk about finances. So someday I'm going to get up here and you all are going to be so excited to see my face. So if you can go to the next slide. I have a lot of information in some of these slides, so if I go too fast or skip over something you want to discuss, please let me know. But for the sake of time, I'll try to be succinct and move through smoothly. Budget parameters. this is just, it's a framework is really how I would view that. It's a baseline of where we're going to start. And this really is representative generally of our general fund budget, which is the major fund that we use when we talk about, but we do have other funding sources as we go through budget development. You'll see those, but just know this is really emphasizing one particular fund, and it's the start of a framework, funding requirements, and intended to provide just a baseline to get started. So why review the budget parameters? There's, again, a lot of information on these. There's 3 things I really want to pick out of here for the board. And the top thing will be the fiscal stewardship, which is one of the board's responsibilities. So always keep that in mind. You'll hear me say that a lot. That's one of the fundamental, you know, as Julie had just stated, it's one of those fundamental things that the board's responsible for helping. And that's why it's important for you to have the information, to have transparency, to hear this discussion and have input and see the data. The second piece is through the policy setting and all of those items that the board does. That's where strategic planning, accountability, and then resource allocation, all of those are going to come where you set board policy, you help set strategic vision or areas of, you know, what are recommendations or things that you see as we move through the budgeting process. And one of the items that may not seem to stick out initially when you read through this, but the third item I really want you to emphasize on here is the advocacy that you have in your role as a board member as you go through up to state legislatures, as you go talk to people. You know, funding for community colleges is imperative for us. We live on that, right? You also have advocacy on, you know, how do we get students to come into the college? How do we retain students? You know, talking to community members, elevating the college. You have a lot of opportunities and a lot of abilities as you meet with people to do that, to leverage that and continue to move forward the college. And again, if I go too fast, please stop me because there's a lot of information on this slide. So there's a lot of details. If I keep going forward, So the key items that are included in budget parameters, the things as you come into it with board members and outward, the thing I would challenge you to really look at is fundamentally, you know, the revenues that we bring in and the expenditures that we put those resources to, all the elements that feed into what make up those revenues. You know, tuition increases are part of what's going to be part of our revenues, how like I just talked about, the advocacy for state funding to bring into community colleges, that comes into our revenue, and all of those pieces help build that fundamentals. You'll see a lot of in the budget parameters that Jonathan's going to talk about and how we establish those. You help set tuition rates, right? You establish that with us, compare us with all the other colleges in the state. One thing I've told you is we are per credit, the highest cost community college. Lynn Benton is really close to us, but I'm not sure what they're going to increase theirs to. So they're all considerations that you need to think about as we go through this budgeting process. And then in that, you know, expenditure limits and contingencies and reserves, those are things we've talked a lot about. Contingencies reserve being your fund balance. What do we expect at the end of the year? We have a board policy that says 10%. We haven't met that. In the last 5 years projection. I'm not sure what the last year we've met that, but those are considerations we really need to think about as far as it goes to fiscal stability, right? And that part of that. So keep all those things in mind. Expenditures, you know, we have target areas. 84% of all of our expenses go to fund the cost of people, you know, faculty, people sitting here, all of the classified staff, all part-time staff, all of those are 84% of that. So keep all those things in mind. So this is one of my key slides, and I think I say that about every slide because I think everything's important. So I don't know, I'll argue with myself here. But the budget pressures are things that also, as you look at all these things that we're facing and fiscal stability, you know, these are the areas that just continue to think about, you know, the planning for subfund deficits. That's one of those things that's highly concerning as a financial person. So we'll keep talking about those. We've talked about that. Enrollment, how enrollment's increasing. So that's a really positive situation for us, but that we'll talk about on the next slide. There's, you know, what the impact of that might be. The ending fund balance really being, our rainy day fund. If something happens, the college was blessed to have COVID money come in, and that's how that ending fund balance got built up. So let's make sure we can maintain that. Again, I'll lobby on fiscal stability. And then tuition increases, making sure we think about that, and that does how that impacts the college and how we can bring in more resources to do that. And again, the staffing cost is something, and I just want to put a nugget in there as you start to think about this. Everything that you make when you invest in people, and 84% of that, when you increase that cost, and this is where I'm not against raises, so please don't get that impression. I want to just give you nuggets of information. 1% raise for just unionized staff, we can talk all staff and break that up if you'd like, is $616,000. So keep that in your mind as we move forward, because that $616,000, every time you give 1%, again, not against giving raises, that affects everybody, is that $616,000 continues on from year to year to year. So if you give that out 3 times, you give that out 6 times, it just compounds, right? And so what we want to make sure is that what we bring in and all the revenue parameters that we establish, that we're not spending more than that so we can sustain ourselves. And then we always have to talk about continuing to invest in infrastructure and deferred maintenance and all of the strategic investments we have. That's always a good discussion. The college is in a great place because we have bond funds that we've been able to make some progress on that, but we still have to continue to make more progress because there's always going to be more of those. And so enrollment growth, since I've been here, one thing being new to higher ed, looking at, people are like, hey, we have all this great enrollment, so we have all this money. But keep in mind there's different buckets. So tuition, assuming that a tuition is fully paid by every student that comes through the door, which that doesn't happen that way. There is a bad debt ratio, and we can go through that at some point if you'd like to. But so theoretically, you make more tuition, that's set. Property taxes are really set no matter what your enrollment numbers come in, good, bad, or ugly. The state funds, the growth of the increase in student enrollment is not seen for 2 or 3 years because they use this 3-year rolling average. And even the maximum that we could increase is a 5% growth. You can't get anything beyond the 5%. So when you bring in more enrollment, it's great because you do bring in all that tuition, but the direct correlation doesn't happen with property taxes, and it doesn't immediately happen with state funds. The best part to get state funds is if they increase the whole state pot for all the community colleges, and that percent is broken up, right? So keep that in mind. Does that make sense? So then when you bring in, which is a great problem to have, so I always feel like I'm saying it's not great to have enrollment, we have to bring in more staff to cover all the courses that students want to take, which is a great problem to have. So there's an increased cost for that. We have to bring in more part-time staff. We have to balance that with required negotiated things that we have to do contractually. So we have to balance all of those pieces and make sure we're covering everything students want to take. So enrollment is great. It's the best situation for us to have, but the cause and effect is not as immediate as people think. So I just challenge you to think about that as we go into budget development and we go into that balancing act, that there's not this big slush fund for us to sit on and go spend, right? And I'm gonna let Jonathan take it over.
Thanks, Kara. I am very excited to talk about budget and finance. I'm a little biased though. I'm gonna get to the next slide. Okay, so my first presentation to you a year ago, I talked a little about art, and right, this is our canvas. So just pretend this is my splash of art. I'm going to use this and kind of talk around the things that Kara talked about, and then we'll kind of land at where we're at and next steps. So I can't overstate the importance of sustainability. We all want to make sure that we can continue to do the good mission that we do from year to year. At that core, that definition makes ensuring that our current expenses do not exceed our current revenues. And that means not going beyond our carry forward, right? So we have an ending fund balance that you as a board set the policy at, roughly 10%. That's what we aim for every year. It's important, Kara also mentioned that 84% of our budget and our expenses are personnel. So whenever we make decisions about reducing or increasing expenses, that almost automatically ties back to staff, right? So we can only cut reduce or increase operational supplies to a certain amount. And then we have to start looking at the whole pie, which 84% of that is people. We have to act as responsible stewards and avoid overcommitting resources. To do so in the long run would jeopardize sustainability, right? Back at that definition of the jobs and staff, people that are already employed here. And maintaining ending fund balance is critical to address unpredictable emergencies. So for a rule of kind of a thumb mark benchmark, month to 1 month of payroll costs is about $7 million here at the college. So we have to take hiring strategically, and we have to think about it carefully. So when we have new positions, like last year, we talked about hiring a new grants coordinator, for example. We wanted to target improving our grants system here at the college. So we just want to be thoughtful about staffing moving forward.
Well, quick clarification on that. My understanding, we've had staff the last 4 years essentially working on grants. Is that not been the case or no? Okay, gotcha. 100%. Yeah, definitely staff, because obviously we'll be seeing a variety of different grants, from USDA grants, commerce grants. We'll see what this next administration has. But yeah, I definitely believe that we should definitely be investing in grants, and particularly around workforce grants and so forth. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for letting me know about that.
Completely agree. We just integrated grants into the budget office for holistic planning.
Okay.
So part of my role, I have a background in grants. So we have one new staff member who's a grants coordinator / manager. She's doing a fantastic job of working on updating our grants procedures and policies and working with the staff.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Zach.
On column 2, the FY25 budget that we adopted last spring, it looks like we are at a net operating position, negative 1.6 down at the bottom. That then, with our current board, our forecast is sort of pulling forward. I thought we passed a balanced budget last year. Where does the negative 1.64 come from relative to the budget that we passed in the spring?
Well, what that means is that essentially we're using some of our ending fund balance to kind of ignite some of the programs that in the enrollment growth. So when we planned and talked about setting up a new budget, we had kind of talked about how some of that would be used from our ending fund balance.
So when we approved the budget in the spring, did we approve 102.61 or some other amount?
102 for the general fund, yes.
Okay. And then what did we approve for expenses?
So it'd be, yeah, Karen.
No, I get what you're saying, you set a limit and what you're at that limit. And so initially, what I'll say about, budgeting is 25 we started a budget at a certain point. We're bringing in more revenue than we anticipated, even in the 102, what we're expecting. So we're expecting more revenue than the established amount in the budget, and it's a starting point. So because if enrollment's higher than we anticipated and other things, those costs are going to increase too. So we may need to have more part-time faculty to cover all the courses. That's one of those key areas. The other one that we also talked about that we'll refine, and I think was part of the information request, is we also are anticipating in these early numbers, and we'll bring new projections forward with estimations, is the $1 million that we the board had approved to move for Fund 9 last year. So $1 million of the $1.6 million is actually related to that $1 million transfer we're anticipating making up this year from last year, if that makes sense. So that's what we've also agreed we can pause on and have more discussion in the information request. I think I said we really need to make that decision by June 1st. What we'd be doing, am I making sense? So last year, the board had said, we know all those sub-fund deficits that are in Fund 9. You had approved $1 million. That wasn't in the budget for last year, though. $1 million transfer out of general fund to start covering those sub-fund deficits that I think came up early in the fiscal year with Sue and John when they were here. Does that ring a
So in the
Bring it back.
spring, when we approved the budget, that was not included in the numbers, and it is included in the numbers now, and that's why the numbers now have an additional $1 million in expenses.
Long story short, yes. Yes, because the $1 million was supposed to be transferred last year, but the budget was not in the last year's budget. So we're saying we still have time to make it up in this budget. We'd have to go through, and that's where we'll go through the process of doing a board resolution where you would have to approve it. So this is an early projection based on those commitments from last year that we can still discuss.
Okay, so the prior year's budget, this million should have been paid that prior year. So we actually had the deficit a year earlier that we're pulling forward into this year.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So this should all look relatively familiar, even though it's a lot of information on the screen. So in a sense, these are variables, right? So with budget planning and forecasting, we do a lot of what if then statements. And so these are the if part of the formula, if you're thinking about the math algebraic formula. And we take kind of to Austin's point, we don't know exactly what the state budget's going to be. So this is an old forecast that uses 5%. We now know that it's going to be 6.97%. We are optimistic that that's going to be our starting place for negotiations and continual changes at the state level. So then the next forecast, you'll see that number in that dark blue column. The third row down, that'll change to 7% because we know that's our starting point. So the rest of these are in a sense our levers, if you will, for us to set a budget. It's what we'll use as a starting place to say, if this happens, then this is what we carry forward as our variable, our impact throughout the budget. So so we're saying if we see an enrollment change in credits of roughly 4%. That's where our revenue is driven from. So roughly 180,000 credits a year times our tuition rate. So if the credits go up by 4%, then we know that we can see roughly, this is all estimates. It's kind of your magic 8-ball ballpark, that revenue will go up by 4%. We can change that, and we're still early in the game. So as we learn more, we update these variables on the budget team and in finance to say, okay, we think it's actually going to be more like 5 or 3.5. And we have Kathy Thomas in institutional research who gives us a lot of data on projecting enrollments and where we are here. So we're starting the budget cycle, so don't worry about memorizing these in this moment. Just kidding. I'm going to give you a pop quiz right now. You can read through these. These are our variables. You'll see these more and more throughout the budget cycle. So, okay. Next slide. Okay, in review, we have requirements and resources. Resources being revenues. So we know that our main buckets are things like the state funding, tuition. Are we going to increase it, decrease it, hold it the same? We take our best guess with informed data on student fees. Do we think they're going to go up? Are they going to go down? That goes through a process. President Gibson can tell you more about it. She's on the committee and helps guide the process. We take our best guess on enrollment growth. So those are all of the resources that we can pull from. On the flip side of the equation, we look at the expenses, salaries, OPE rates. The OPE rates, we're going to be calculating those in January. So we'll be talking more about those soon.
What is OPE?
Other personnel expenditures. Yeah. So it gets blended into a rate and includes all the things related to benefits.
That's what I thought, but I didn't know what it meant.
Oh, good question. Thank you. We've talked a lot about deferred maintenance. Last year, that was a strategic investment. We put $500,000 or $550,000 back into the budget to address things like sidewalks, buildings, and so on. Do we want to do that again next year? That's for all of us to decide as a group how we want to strategically invest in deferred maintenance, capital needs, things like professional development, staffing costs, budget transfers to address things like PERS, sub-fund deficits on Fund 9, and so on. So these are the parameters that we'll kind of talk about as we move through the budget cycle and talk about as a group, make decisions based on data and informed conversation. Yeah, Austin.
In regards to tuition increases, based off of the governor's budget, which is 870 million. Thank you. How much would we need to increase tuition just if we got that budget?
It's a good question.
And we
Yeah.
could totally research that. And if we can get back to me on that, that would be great.
Kevin?
Thanks for the presentation. I think this is a question for Kara on slide 5. You talked about the correlation between enrollment and faculty and staff needs. Can you talk about how close we are to that? I'm going to botch this up, but a couple of years ago, the consultant said, hey, we've got theoretically enough staff and faculty to accommodate 8,500 students, and I may have that number wrong, but there was a number. How close are we to that kind of, oh, now we have to hire more folks?
That's a really great question because I've asked that when I started here. Well, how can we fill that? I'm going to look at side eye with Shelley here because it's not as easy as it sounds. That's something I thought, well, can we just correlate that? Because it depends what students want to take for courses, what their programs are. And we have contractual requirements that allow us to do certain things within programs. And that's where other things come in. So it's not easy to just correlate that to something that simple, but it's something that I'll go back and look at with Shelley, and I can try and get you an answer to assume if all the programs were full, what would that look like? I can get you something like that, but it's assuming that people want to work in the programs of all the areas that we have faculty qualified or teaching in, if that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, I guess generally it's like, well, we had some extra may not be the right word, but we had some capacity. And so I'd be interested in knowing, has that capacity, is it still there? Have we used it all up, as you say,
Yeah, and based on how quickly we need to fill part-time faculty, I'm going to say we're getting pretty full, but there might be, flexibility in some program areas, but there's wait lists in areas. There's, and that's kind of plumbing through all that, which they're doing very actively.
Thank you.
Julie.
I don't know if this is possible, but do we have like a kind of a formulated percentage of like the ratio as enrollment increases, that we know that if it increases by 3%, that we're going to see faculty need expense go up 4%? Or do we have that kind of like built in that we know was, that they're following each other along on any of the finances or year-to-date forecasting?
I think that still relates back to the areas that we need the classes. I wish it were that. I tried to make it that simple. I'm like, well, isn't it this? It's not. Is what I've learned very quickly. And I don't know if you have any context to add, or did I summarize it pretty well? Yeah. It's tough. And that is something that, my counterparts are doing, is really actively looking at the areas that have the long wait lists and what program areas are students wanting to be in, so we can invest faculty in those areas to continue to grow the right spot, right?
Steve?
This may be a little premature, but in terms of feedback, as you're thinking about the budget, at some point the board gets to weigh in on these budget parameters. I, read the documents, and a couple things I want to put out, 2 things really for fellow board members to consider. I know we're not voting on anything tonight, but just things to think about are the fact that our per credit hour is the most expensive in the state. I don't like that feeling. I don't think it's hard for me to justify it. It doesn't feel like we should be the most expensive. I also feel like we shouldn't be the least expensive. I can see that also, but I don't think we're in the most expensive market. I can think of a handful of reasons why some small number of institutions should likely be ahead of us. I don't think it's the kind of thing we can address instantaneously or in one budget cycle, but I would love for us as a board to develop some kind of a multi-year plan, whatever, and I don't know what shape or form that would take, but to get us to a place that feels more appropriate relative to, where we are in the state and what our students expect of us. So a thing for the rest of the board to consider. I know there'll be other opportunities. And then the other thing, something that came up, I think it was last meeting, but maybe it was 2 meetings ago, the fact that we used to spend, I think it's $300,000 a year printing and mailing I forget the course book, the catalog, thank you, to every home address. I don't know precisely in Lane County. We don't anymore, but I think it's because we don't have the money, or we've decided strategically to move in different directions. I guess I think that's a mistake. And I would like to see us find the money to bring that back, even if it's on a once every other year basis. Maybe it's not every year. I think there's strategic value in that investment to remind our community on an annual basis who we are, what we offer. We will be going back to them at some point with a bond. We might pick up credit hours just simply by putting that out there. So those are the two concerns that I would like to see us think about as a board this year.
I've got Austin and then Denise.
I definitely understand your concern, Steve. I disagree in regards to, I think there's incredible value that we provide as an institution for the price point of our tuition. The work that our faculty, our classified professionals, and the facilities and institutions and as an institution, the value that our students get for the tuition that they pay is really incredible. And I actually spoke to a parent recently who was looking at, do I send my kid to the University of Oregon? Do I send him to Lane Community College? And the value that they saw based off of and the affordable tuition that we offer, that parent was looking at that and seeing the value and seeing the programs we have, see the clubs, the great student government that we have, and so forth. So I definitely understand your concern, especially from a visual perspective of like, these other institutions are less than us and so forth. But at the same time, there's incredible value here that we provide to our community, that we provide to these individual students. And there are programs that can help them with those costs, including the STEP program and a variety of other different areas. And of course, thank you to our donors from the foundation. And with all that being said, the market and again, like we also want to look at a variety of different situations too, as far as the costing. And that all being said, I just wanted to just simply put that out there in regards to the market, what we're seeing from other institutions, and what educational options that students have within our community.
Denise?
I like to get a historic perspective. So if it's, for how long have we been the most expensive community college in the state? I think that chart or information could be useful to us. I don't necessarily think that cost, the value is wonderful, and I don't want to compare us to a state university, because one of the greatest selling points for community colleges, having worked in one for over 20 years, is that this is a wonderful, wonderful way for students to accumulate credits and explore their interests, and then be able to keep the cost down as they transfer out. I mean, it's fantastic. I think, I don't know, the international program could correct me, but I think we're the only country in the world that does community college as an educational concept.
Southwestern, yeah.
But community college, it's an entirely American idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really, really wonderful, and there's incredible amount of value. But I think from a historic perspective, it would be real interesting to find out how long this trend has been going on. Thank you.
I have a couple follow-up questions related to things that were on my mind that other people started to ask. But with regards to the cost per credit hour, do we have programs that are particularly expensive that have higher credit costs than other programs?
The per credit tuition fee is the same, but we have differential fees per course. So some, like aviation, has large differential fees that are separate from the per tuition fee, but the per credit tuition fee is the same.
What about the nursing program?
Nursing program also has differential fees on top of the per credit tuition fee.
Okay. Are those programs included in our average cost calculation?
No, the only comparison we do is mandatory fees and per tuition fees with other community colleges.
Okay. So we're not comparing apples to oranges in terms of, that we have these very expensive programs that are skewing our numbers. That's not the case.
No, there are other factors that are not included in there.
Okay. So yeah, I think having a historical understanding of sort of how we got to this point, how we've compared historically would be really great. I think related to Kevin's question, knowing where we have capacity to add students without significantly increasing costs, whereas maybe there's areas where adding a student actually hurts us financially. If we have to add additional faculty and staff. So knowing sort of where the capacity is and is not within the institution would be really good. Could we go to back one slide for just a moment? I wonder, with regards to the LCC allocation of the state budget at 8%, I believe we're at about 10% of the state's population here in Lane County. And what are the thoughts of, getting back to our percentage of the state allocation relative to our population? And how do we forecast that moving forward so we could get to 8.1, 8.2, 8.3 in the out years?
Yeah, and the other piece that's included in that 8% is our allocation, even though I think we now moved above the other Mountain Hood, we're above them. But what the state also takes into account is what you collect for property taxes. So we collect more property taxes than the other one. So that also is included in that piece to get that. So they take the whole picture and then move it back. So we are now bigger than Mount Hood as far as enrollment, but we're still less of the state funds because our property tax collection is higher. So that takes a factor in there. So on the outward, it looks like, hey, you're down there. We're actually doing better than Mount Hood this year, last year. And, but that piece kind of comes into there. So it's kind of a bigger picture. You have to look at all of it together to piece it out. So I think we'd have to move, and I don't know if Brett has any more insight or Jonathan, but I think we'd have to move substantially more to get that property, because that property tax helps us.
And we cap at 5%. So it's a lot of that like whack-a-mole. You move one part of the equation, you have to kind of push on other areas.
Well, I did not know that because our local population pays property taxes for LCC, that means we get less state money. That is very disappointing and frustrating.
Well, that's part of their equitable thing, is that you take all the base that you get and then you look at it from there. Yeah.
Well, their citizens should pay taxes for their community colleges too.
Yeah. I think we have higher values. That's the problem.
The last question I think I have is related to the FY26 and FY27 forecast for the state funding allocation. I think I've heard a conversation in the past about sort of spending 49% of the money in year one and 51% of the money in year two. Is that something that's coming from the state level, or is that something that we should think about implementing so that we're not setting ourselves up for failure in the second year by not allocating additional funds from that 2-year allocation to the second year?
That's set at the statewide level. Unless I'm mistaken, I'm looking at Brett. Doesn't the statewide level sets how much they allocate from year one to year two? So we just get what they give us.
Okay, so it's not a flat amount like it's shown here.
Well, these are estimates here, but it is the Community College Support Fund basically takes the whole allocation that the legislature provides and does 8 quarterly payments. It's not divided up 51% in the first year of the biennium, or 49% in the first year and 51% in the second, because the second year of the biennium uses the distribution formula for the support fund, and that formula disperses the money in year two. It's the state. The amount we get from the state in the first year of the biennium will change slightly from year two. It's not going to be an exact even amount.
Okay. I think I'm done.
I think we'll provide you maybe the formula if you want to look at it, but it's the state's not thinking that Lane is going to be the exact same size, or the other colleges are going to be the exact same size for year one and year two, which would allow you to do that type of budgeting.
Yeah, I was just thinking if we need to save some money from the first year into the second year. But I'm done with my questions. Does anybody else have any other questions, Steve?
It's not a question, but the third thing I was going to suggest for board members to consider as we go through this budget process, we've heard a handful of times in the last 3 or 4 months, maybe more, about from faculty primarily, about the use and adoption of these OERs. And that has, potential significant impact on student fee, their total cost, right, of attendance, because there's books that they don't have to buy. And so I would advocate for us as a board and ask staff to help us think through ways that we might be able to incentivize more of that, even if it's a modest amount of money that we might set aside in the next budget cycle to incentivize those faculty who haven't yet had the opportunity or whatever it is to investigate OERs. It seems like it could have a potentially immediate impact on total cost of attendance for students next year. And so I put that out there also.
Okay. Any other questions before moving on?
Chair Mulholland, we have like two.
Oh,
more
I'm
slides.
sorry.
Okay, no, it's okay. So the last little bit's just a little bit about timing and next steps. This is our budget calendar that gives you kind of a high 30,000-foot view of what to expect. It's not the granular, but it will give you a sense of what the budget office is doing, what we're doing in the budget development subcommittee, and so on. And so kind of where we're at right now in January, we've already really started getting into the granular with our budget partners. So budget managers, deans, directors, and all the folks who give us that input. And so we're going to start compiling that information to put together the proposed budget. So you'll start hearing more about that information. We're calculating OPE rates, so the benefits. We're looking into how that all kind of pulls together. And then in the upcoming months, we're going to have forums to reach out to our partners and just kind of talk about all the things that are happening with budget. So, yeah, it's definitely so forth.
Can you tell me more about this forum and who exactly it goes to and more details?
So last year we didn't have it because I was new and I didn't know that it was a thing. But the idea is that all students are invited, and I could envision working with SGA to kind of partner on that. But I think I would need to get more information on what has happened in prior years, and then I can answer that question for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
One more. Sorry. So what we would like to do, go one more. We're going to have more preliminary discussions about parameters. Vice President Flath, Kara, would like to do a deep dive series. So all these questions you've asked about with all the parameters and the formulas and whatnot, it's getting ahead, but Kara.
Yeah, no, and it's just, and also in coordination with President Bolger, just what are the continued financial discussions? What are things you'd like to hear, the parameters? I have your questions today, but as part of, just trying to get more information to the board, to the public, to the employees, the people that work in the college, the students, what are the things that you would like to hear as we continue to have these financial discussions? If you think of anything, please, work with President Bolger, and I'm happy to hear feedback.
Okay. I will send my questions to President Bolger. So with that, we've got 5 reports to get through before the end of the evening. So President Bolger, can you go ahead and introduce those, please?
Yes. So we have the vice presidents doing reports, and I've asked them to be brief. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, President Bolger. I'm going to be very brief. You've received my report, and I trust that you have reviewed it. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to entertain them. I do want to, similar to President Bolger, I want to thank everyone for all the hard work, and just to recognize the difference that our colleagues make in our student and our community's lives. Our enrollment is up about roughly 3%. And it feels very busy on campus. This is the very first week of classes, and it's fun that the students are back. So thank you. So unless there are questions, that's all I have to say this evening.
Good evening. I just want to bring to your attention a couple of things. One is something that was mentioned in Dr. Bolger's presidential report. That's the mentorship program was kicked off this past month. We had 34 employees sign up, representing all of the employee groups, part-time and full-time, classified and faculty and managers. We even had 13 sign up and say, I would be glad to be a mentor or a mentee. I mean, there's a lot of interest in the program, and so we're excited to get that kicked off. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that Dr. Bolger presented to College Council an announcement today of the launch of the recruitment for the AVP of Culture and Belonging. This is going to be a re-envisioned DEI position that we had when Greg Evans was here, expanding the scope, I think in recognition of the environment that we find ourselves in as a nation, to be able to continue that important work and promote the values that we have as an institution and not get sidelined by the politics of the country right now. So that ends my report.
Good evening, Board. I would just want to mention just a couple of things. I wanted to point out our head coach, Greg Shealy. He reached 2 really big milestones this last month. December the 7th, he coached his 1,000th career game.
Wow.
And a week later, on December the 14th, his 800th career victory. So that's 4 for 5 over 1,000 games. I mean, that's amazing. He's the winningest coach, I think, in all athletics in the state. So I think that's just, we've got some fantastic people here. I also wanted to point out Welcome Week, touching a bit more on what people have said. I think it's one of my favorite times here. We have students who are involved in clubs and organizations, volunteering. We have staff, classified professionals. We have faculty, we have administrators, managers, directors, deans, and it is just a wonderful experience. We get new students every time coming up. We're giving them coffee, treats, things like that, but also walking them to buildings. And I think what was a little funny this time was we have these campus maps, and students saying, where's building 33? And we're like, building 33? Where's building 33? It's the new ITech building. And we're looking on the map. Oh yeah, that's what it is. Cause it's the first time we guided students in the classroom, but it was wonderful. Like we're seeing it for the first time too. And just the excitement on campus around these 2 new buildings. And I'm really thinking that's going to just be wonderful to show off. We had Springfield was a Chamber of Commerce on campus today, and it was just great to show off our campus as it is. Those are the only couple of things. Next time, I'd love to give a bigger update. It's also the holidays, so we have a little less too. So thank you.
You'll have to do a Find Building 33 game or contest.
Okay, with that, I think we're to our LCCEA and LCCEF reports.
Good evening, President Bulger, Sophie, and Board of Education members. I'm going to just talk about one topic tonight because of the late hour, and really appreciate your service and time on these long evenings. I wanted to share a little bit about part-time faculty working conditions. Part-time faculty are largely contingent workers with term-by-term employment. And part-time faculty here at LCC can, after working 7 terms over a 3-year period, if they're lucky enough to get assignments for that period of time, they can earn a right to course assignments, but that right is limited to course availability. In addition, part-time faculty can be displaced at the last minute with class cancellations, or when a full-time faculty member has a class canceled. Our part-time faculty comprise the majority of all faculty teaching at LCC. We have about 275 part-time faculty working over the course of each year, and only 195 full-time faculty. Part-time faculty do not earn the same salary rates as full-time faculty, and they have an entirely separate lower salary schedule, as do our part-time athletic coaches and our part-time flight tech instructors out at the airport campus. This disparity has a significant impact on their lives and ultimately also impacts the learning environment for students. Part-time faculty are frequently required to have more than one job and routinely have 2 or more other jobs outside of LCC. In fact, according to our last faculty survey on faculty needs, with 248 respondents and a 62% response rate, 39.5% of part-time faculty have relied on government assistance while working at LCC. That's 40%. 15% of part-time faculty experienced food insecurity in the past year, and 15.2% experienced housing insecurity in the past year. I prepared for you a table, which I would like to share, and it's color coded. I know it's very late, so the numbers are not as important as the colors in terms of the message. The table shows, once you get a copy of it, you'll see that it shows what the annual salaries are for part-time faculty who are working half-time all year at LCC. And it also shows what their annual salaries are if they're working also during the summer. And only about half of the part-time faculty are lucky enough to get an assignment during the summer. And the color coding indicates whether their living wage, their annual salary, means that they earn enough to have a living wage in the Eugene Springfield area, according to MIT. And you'll see in orange, that means that every single step on the salary schedule for any part-time faculty member working that amount is not earning a living wage at LCC. And then in the subsequent columns, after the orange columns, all of the red highlights, which are almost all of the salaries, indicate that the faculty who are earning those rates on that part of the salary schedule are eligible for SNAP benefits. That's food stamps. So you'll see there's very little green, very few part-time faculty members who are working half-time without summer, and even some working with summer who are not eligible for SNAP benefits. Am I allowed to say Steve?
I'm just a little confused. Are you telling us that these are their full-time equivalent numbers? If you were to take their part-time percentage and multiply it out to their full-time rate, that even then they're earning less than the living wage recommended by MIT?
No, these are their earnings if they are working half-time during the year, plus for the summer, the average summer FTE assignment that they're able to achieve. So the issue with part-time faculty that makes it very challenging for them is that they have term-by-term assignments and term-by-term employment. So every term they have, every 3 months, they are finding out whether or not they're going to have an assignment, whether or not they're going to have a course to teach, what times, what days of the week those are. So in addition to the fact that part-time faculty have to have other jobs in order to survive, it's very challenging to have another job when your schedule changes every 3 months and you don't know what it's going to be, whether it's Monday, Wednesday, it's Tuesday, Thursday, it's every day of the week, it's morning, it's evenings, and so on. Not to mention the last minute assignments and the last minute course cancellations, which of course then would result in the loss of the salary for the course. So thank you very much for your time this evening. There won't be a quiz on the numbers, but I hope you will take some time to review it.
Frankie couldn't make it, so her report has been uploaded to board docs.
Okay, thank you. Well, getting to our closing items here, are there any board member questions or comments?
Comment.
I got Steve and then Austin.
Just a quick one. So we passed the OCCA legislative priorities. I just wanted to be reminded, did we review those in a work session last meeting?
We did not.
So that's how, so my sense is generally as a best practice, we normally, whatever appears in our consent agenda, we have an opportunity to review that ahead of time so that there's comments, questions, whatever it might be, there's some time to address that. I'm okay with the fact that it didn't happen this time, but it just seems like it's a thing that we ought.
We've reviewed those before though, haven't we?
Well, that was my question. I was wondering if we.
It's just in terms of process, what happened, OCCA approved these and recommended them just before we conducted interviews, middle of December. And so I didn't feel like we could add it to that night for discussion. And so, but then the legislative session's also about to start and.
No, so we got squeezed this time. All right, in any case, so it's not. My point is only that we ought to do that. It sounds like that's our normal practice. It got pushed aside this time. No.
Because since we didn't have our regular meeting in December,
Understood.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we were just trying.
Like I said, I don't have anything against what we passed. I was confused as to why we didn't have the opportunity to review. Thank you for the explanation.
You're part of our board package.
I know, yeah.
I mean, I believe we sent them out ahead of time.
Okay.
So, you got them a week ago,
All right.
but you didn't get them 3 weeks ago. In that context, any other, Austin?
Yeah, first off, I really, really want to emphasize this document right here, which is the State of the Workforce 24-26. It is extraordinary how many occupations that are going to be growing over the next 10 years, essentially, what requires an associate's degree. And these are and there's even occupations that are not even created yet. And the additional education is going to be required. The wages that these individuals can earn with that associate's degree is amazing. The fields of bioscience, healthcare, and so forth. Now, I know our cabinet is looking at this data on a regular basis, but as we go through the budgetary cycle, as we go ahead and improve new programs, as we look at how we're offering programs and how we're passing policies to support these programs, this is an incredible guiding star for us to help develop our workforce, our local economy, build our economies to scale, and to create a better Lane County. I really appreciate my request to get these printed out for the board. I highly, highly recommend, if you haven't already, please read this. There's some great stuff in here, and there's opportunities that we can do to develop our workforce here locally.
Chair Mulholland, I think that there's a document, isn't there, Celia? The board retreat agenda. Celia, would you make some reference to that if you could?
Vince Adams sent out a draft board retreat agenda. So Kevin and I, we just got that, yes, I think today, actually. And so we haven't gotten to ask any questions about it, but thought it was important to share that draft agenda with the board, and that will be our meeting 2 weeks from tonight.
January 22nd.
What was that? So that's in today's board packet, is that preliminary agenda, yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I saw it. I read it. Thanks for sharing it. My feedback is only that it, while the items look, fine to cover in a board retreat, it didn't seem to add, in my mind, up to the 3 hours that we've set aside for that retreat. It says on that agenda like 6 to 9 p.m. or something like that. My feedback would be to limit the time we spend that evening, given the agenda. To me looks more like something like half as much as the 3 hours we've set aside.
Vince thought that it could last 5 hours, and then he cut an item and said, well, since we only got 3 hours, we'll cut one of the items. That would have been a 5-hour agenda. So he seemed to think it would be the full 3 hours.
I think less is more, quite honestly. I will, so
Kevin and I will be having an agenda setting meeting, so we can check in then and see if there's any adjustments that can be made. With regards to future meeting dates, I believe Celia sent out calendar invites for the Oregon Community College Association lobby days in early March. Brett, do you have a sense of when would we know when meetings with our local legislators are, if they're all going to be spread across the 2 days or 1 day, where we can all come on one day or the other?
All meetings will be scheduled on the second day, Thursday, the 6th. That's the official day of the Community College Lobby Day. So we'll start scheduling those meetings as staffers start filling the offices next week, and then really things will get going in the Capitol the Tuesday after MLK Day is when things really get into full swing. So hopefully by the time we connect next in February, we'll start to have most of those meetings confirmed. The first day, the legislative summit is it's usually an event that goes from about 10 a.m. into the evening. That is a board day. There's a meeting that evening. But during the day, there's a program that's put on. Legislative leadership comes in. Last summit we had, I believe the Senate president was there, leaders of the Ways and Means Education Subcommittee, really all the champions for community colleges that serve in the legislature. They come and speak throughout the day. And then in the evening, there's a reception that's hosted, and staffers and legislators come and experience wine from Chemeketa and culinary treats from Southwestern. And a lot of the community colleges from around the state help contribute to that. But So that's how that'll work. The summit's on the first day and our lobby visits are on the second day. I do want to give folks a heads up. If you have not seen the Capitol recently, it is still very much an active construction zone. And it's when we're not in meetings, there will not be a lot of places in the building to hang out. There is not a cafeteria at the moment like there was in the past. The main section, the main middle part of the Capitol is closed to the public. It's not probably what you're used to if you've been up there before.
So just to follow up, it sounds like the second day is the more important day for board members to attend. Is that
That's not a
accurate?
fair question for me.
That is- it really is.
Both days are important. If you can only make Wednesday and you want to do that, that's great. But yes, the day that we meet with legislators will be on that Thursday.
Thank you.
Well said, Brett.
Anything else before we sign off?
Don't that next, the retreat date, I'm sorry.
2 weeks from
2 weeks from tonight, 6 to 9 p.m.
Maybe
Okay.
maybe 6 to 7:30.
With that, we are